I mean, Bob's did not indicate he would not be attending tonight, correct?
Correct.
Well, we can give them a few minutes to get settled and join the meeting.
Oh, there he is.
Okay, hold on a minute. Peter, I'm going to step away just for a minute while you do introductions. The
Okay.
introductory.
Well,
Good evening.
hello, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's perfect. So we'll get started. Welcome to the Monday, August 28th, 2023, regular meeting of the Easton, Massachusetts Planning and Zoning Board. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, you can use the link on the agenda, or find the meeting on the town website. But if you're already here, that's probably been done already. Let's see. While conducting remote meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While the board members or commissioners and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted and with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function found under participants from Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you are joining by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. We will do our best to recognize any members, anyone from the public wishing to speak. There's a few more minor notes are available on the second page of the agenda, which again is available on the homepage of the town website under the calendar. We'll get started. I'm not sure if Stephanie is back from her. Oh, she's back.
I am.
Okay. Attendance-wise, I'll Duchesne here. Stetson.
Here.
Kadam.
Present.
And Wolf.
Present.
Okay. First item is an internally illuminated sign for 25 Robert Drive, Big Y. Looks like a pylon sign and a wall sign to review.
And Mr. Chair, if you could ask anyone representing that project to raise their hand.
And if anyone is here to represent that project, please raise your hand. Or make a note in the Q&A section. No?
Jen Renzi, Graphic Impact Signs, representing Big Y.
Great, thanks. Welcome. Would you like to tell us about your sign and maybe share your screen?
Sure. So what we have is a simple rebranding change. There's two freestanding signs. There's one freestanding sign that is on the Robert Drive corner, and the other is on the Foundry Street elevations. Those are simply just going to be refaces of existing. So the size, the type of illumination, colors, those all remain. So it's just simply a face change. So is there any questions on the freestanding signs? You want me to move on to the building signs?
Could you share your screen and so we can just kind of look at the that sign together?
I thought that you would have that. My apologies. My vehicle was towed to the dealership, and my computer and all my documents are in that.
And that's okay. We have backup screen sharers here. Stephanie?
Yeah,
Please share.
everybody see that?
So this actually is the building signage.
Yep, should we start with the wall sign since that's where he started?
Okay,
So you'd like me to talk about the building signs now?
Oh, well, let's look at the pylon. Let's go back to the pylon first, just since we talked, just.
I need to find that,
Yeah.
sorry.
There they are.
There we go.
So we have two
Illuminated
freestanding
I'm
signs.
sorry, which
Oh.
one is the pre-existing? You're going to need to direct me.
Okay, so both of these pages show each of the freestanding signs. The inset photos show the existing conditions. So you'll see that the circle logo it was World Class Market. It's changing to Your Family Market. So the logo stays the same. It's just going to be Your Family Market. So it's just a simple take out the panel, put the new panel in. There's no changes in dimensions, no changes in material, no changes in colors. It's just the content is changing from Big Y World Class Market to Big Y Your Family Market.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this wall sign and pylon sign change? No, neither. All right, let's go up to the building.
Okay, so for the building signage, the existing signage is very similar to the proposed signage. What Big Y wanted to do is this was originally a Hannaford location. The sign sat very high on the building, and they wanted to make it more aesthetically appealing. So we are looking to take the same size sign, lower it on the elevation where the logo is, and then where Your Family Market is shown, that's also lower as the World Class Market sat higher on the building. So if you scroll further, you'll see the other direction, please, I believe.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I think I've
No, I
noticed
don't think
that.
I had, oh, there it
Yeah.
is,
Mhm.
sorry.
So this was sitting awfully high because that's where the structure was for the Hannaford supermarket. So where Big Y was, they had their large logo with fruits and everything. And then where World Class Market is, they had a much larger Hannaford set of letters there, like double the size of that. So when Big Y went in to change this, when they took over those locations, they just put the signs back in the same spot. If you scroll back down a couple pages, you'll see the new paint scheme that has already been introduced. So they are using some nice, neutral earth tone colors, and we are lowering the logo and the graphics on the fascia as compared to what's existing. Square footage remains the same. The Big Y logo is currently internally illuminated. The replacement sign would be also internally illuminated. The World Class Market was not illuminated, so therefore we're not going to illuminate the Your Family Market.
And the circle Big Y sign is a light box. There's no it's not like a offset or like the Big Y doesn't bump out or anything, right?
Correct. It's exactly the same size, same type of sign. It's a newer sign with LEDs in it that's get lowered on the fascia.
Yep.
We had to do different brackets, because of the engineering and the attachment. We had to make it structurally feasible as well.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? Stephanie, you had a few notes. Were there any that you feel you should share with us?
No, I think that it meets the standards and the guidelines, and if I'm looking at it, I don't know if I'm gonna draw with my hand here, if that's some of the structural changes that are needed, but it actually seems to emphasize the kind of, it's a little bit industrial looking architecture, but I think it's appealing.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like they were just kind of redoing the whole facade and entrance, right? So
Yeah.
it was a good time to
Yeah.
move brackets around and get the signs where they want them. So yeah. Cool. Are there any comment from the public on these two signs?
Let me stop sharing so I can see if anybody raises their hand. I don't see anything. Anybody raising their hand?
Okay, in that case, we could entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the signs for 25 Robert Drive for the two pylon signs and one wall sign as presented. Kevin, Second Stetson.
Okay, all in favor, Kadam,
aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
DeShane, aye. Okay, those signs passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good luck with your car.
Thank you.
So we have a couple continuances. Is that am I reading this correctly, Stephanie?
Yes. The first
Okay.
one. The first one's to September 5th and the second one to September 18th.
Make a motion to continue 537 Turnpike Street to September 5th. Stetson.
Kevin, second.
Okay, all in favor, Kadam,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
DeShane, aye.
We'll also make a motion to continue the public hearing for 523 Foundry to September 18th. Stetson.
Kevin, second.
Okay, all in favor, Wolf,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Kadam,
Aye.
DeShane, aye. Okay, both of those continuances pass. Next, we have 229 Main Street site plan review. Looks like Mr. Palmer and his representative were here last week, so perhaps they're here tonight.
And Mr. Meerman, if there's someone else with you, if they could raise their hand.
I don't know if Mr. Palmer is on tonight or not.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah.
So, great. So did you have a few changes? Actually, just please introduce yourself for the record, then let us know.
Certainly. Good evening, members, and Mr. Anderson. It's Mike Merman. I'm representing Robert Palmer and Abe's LLC, the property owner at 228 to 229 Main Street, rather. We were in front of you a few weeks ago, and there was some concern about the plan that we had submitted at that point, not having enough specifics as to how the improvements were going to be laid out in this existing building. And we went through Stephanie's a document review memo and the points that she had raised in there and tried to incorporate those all into the new plan, the new proposed site plan we submitted. This was done by a different, rather than go to Vulcan, we went to an architect who was familiar with the site. And they gave us a plan, which I think gives everything you were asking for in terms of information. We've got the one-way coming in, coming out. We've got the arrows painted going in and going out for direction, the locations of the signs, the landscaped area in the front. And in the back, we have the painted parking spaces. We have the handicap area, the access ramp into the building from the handicap. We have the storage area for the snow in the back. And I think we put the proposed new dumpster area in as well. The lighting is on the building, and I think Stephanie or someone at the town asked about the lighting, and since the type of lighting isn't indicated, we could just have the board approve subject to the lighting type that you expected, which was I don't recall the name, Stephanie, but do you remember?
Downcasting and dark sky friendly. It's really more
Yeah,
how the light is projected and that it doesn't cast upwards and onto other property.
Yeah, I rode my bike around just like the perimeter of the parking lot, and the ones on the building at least are definitely pointing down inside like a cannon. So they are downcasting rectangular can lights,
okay.
if that helps. Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think
So otherwise, I mean, I guess we could have asked for a little more detail on the landscaping, but we didn't. So I don't want to have to redo that again.
Well, I can tell you, this isn't his first location. They have they've got one here not too far from me. Very well maintained, very, very appealing from the street. They'll do it justice.
Yes, and Stephanie and all of us here in the town would appreciate if you made sure to use like native species on the landscape and design.
No burning bushes.
Right.
Okay.
Too thorny anyways, right? So yeah. Yeah, great. Anyone else? Any questions? Stephanie, do you have more comments?
No, Mr. Meerman covered all the topics that were identified in my report from the last meeting. And again, everything's shown. The parking is shown on the plan, formalized. So I think they're all set.
Yeah. And I guess another condition would be the striping and this updated striping and signage.
Yes.
Mhm.
I have a question. Is there entrance and exit signs?
There are, yes.
Right.
They are not shown.
Yeah, you can see if you look on the bottom.
Okay, yeah. I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, right here.
You could have gone ahead and put in an ATM too, just like a coffee shop wanted to a few months ago, but I guess you don't need an ATM. All right, that was a joke. So, all right, how should we move along here?
Make a motion to approve the site plan with the condition of the restriping and the dark sky friendly light installation. Stetson.
Kevin, second.
No, just a note of further discussion, which we don't have to discuss, is that that there's a utility pole on the north east side actually has a light like that's pointing into the parking lot, but that's that. I'm not going to hold up our vote on that, just to point out for the record that there was, I think like the owner will pay the utility company to put a light up there, and then they pay for the electricity. I think that's how that works.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a motion here. Any further discussion after my discussion? No. Okay. All in favor? Stetson?
Aye.
Kadam?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
DeShane, aye. That passes. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. We have 45 Bristol Drive. Minor modification of a site plan. J.K. Holmgren Engineering.
He should be popping up.
Oh, there it is. Hello, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sorry about that, guys. I thought that was going to take longer than it did. Scott Faria, Holmgren Engineering, representing Bristol Realty Trust for a request for a site plan modification at 45 Bristol Drive. 45 Bristol Drive is in your Easton Industrial Park. It's kind of the big 3-story white office building. It was approved back in 1984 under site plan approval. And at the time, you had different zoning requirements regarding parking. And in order to get this building permitted, it's roughly about 22,000 square feet of floor space. So in order to get that permitted for 22,000 square feet of office space, the owners at that time needed to include parking on a parcel of land directly across the street. So they constructed their site, constructed the parking lot across the street. The parking lot really was never used. In the meantime, over the last almost 40 years now, your zoning requirements have changed. Specifically the requirements for office space, which now require 1 space per 500 square feet of office. With a 22,000 square foot building, we're required to have 45 parking spaces under current zoning. On the property itself, on the 45 Bristol Drive property, we have 110 spaces that exist currently. So we would like to request the board to modify our site plan approval so it will free up the property across the street from having the required parking. So we'll just have parking on our site. If anybody's ever been by the site, I've been there numerous times. The parking lot at 45 Bristol is never full itself. Certainly the lot across the street is never used, but the parking lot itself it's never more than half full. So that's the request that we have before you tonight. Mr. Chairman, we did have a memorandum that Attorney Marione's office submitted to go along with our modification that speaks to a little bit more of the specifics of the approval of the site and the building itself. But that's basically the quick conclusion to everything, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, did everyone have a chance to review the plans, and do you understand like the location of the surplus parking? Yeah, good. Stephanie, did you have any
No, I can affirm what Scott was saying about no vehicles being parked across the street. My mechanic is in the park and I frequently pass this and it is vacant. The only time I've ever seen anyone in the parking lot was when they were doing some kind of minor repair to their vehicle.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the area and I agree with everyone's statements. How does that work with like any like part of the building that might be owned like as like a condominium? Does like a change of a site plan like change anything for the condo owners?
I don't believe it would. I mean, it was all included.
Yeah, it doesn't really pertain
Yeah.
to us. I was just wondering, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any hands raised in the public? Does not look that way. So it's time to make a motion or ask more questions.
Make a motion to approve the minor modification, Stetson.
Second, Wolf.
I don't know if you were muted there, so your second didn't go through, but Mickey covered you there. Okay, let's see. All in favor. Wolf,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Kadam,
Aye.
Duchesne, aye. Okay, thanks. That passes.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Mhm. Okay, we moved through those pretty efficiently. Now that leaves us a little time for our next item, which is MBTA zoning.
Okay. So, as certainly the board members know, and I think some members of the public who I've seen at previous meetings when we've been talking about the MBTA zoning, the board came to consensus on the 2 potential districts, and I am going to share my screen. And for review purposes, the two districts are the potential Eastman Boundary District. This was modified from a version that had been suggested previously, where there were parcels along the south side of Boundary Street included, and the board decided to focus on the northern portion, which provides sufficient acreage to more than meet the contiguous 25-acre upland requirement.
Should we stay on that one while we're here? Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, and let me,
This isn't really the final. We're going over everything. This is not. We're not making any decisions obviously tonight. On
right, this is really an introduction to what the underlying zoning will look like, the actual zoning language, to review the draft.
And
So,
then the two looks like there were only two vacant lots, and those are the two where there was kind of a informal discussion about with someone that already owned that and maybe wanted to build some apartments there.
right, yes,
So that's something to really note, and that maybe we need to think about if they were ready to do apartments before. Well, they're going to be more ready now unless they spent their money on something else, right? Yeah. So okay.
so, and this is the Avalon multifamily complex, and that's just under 15 units per acre. And then this is the Big Y, and I'm sorry, that's Target, not Big Y. And I think this is the new Starbucks. This is the new townhouse style development that Avalon recently completed a couple of years ago. This is the plaza itself. And yes, this is a warehouse. I think they're doing some level of manufacturing there, or they're oh gosh, the word is,
Yeah, it looks pretty busy there these days, or busier than it was at first. I'm not sure.
yeah. And yeah, so that's that district. And Peter, are you entertained? Dale Carrister has his hand raised. Are you?
Yeah, let's just kind of take things one at a time here. That way we don't have to kind of go back and forth. So Dale, Stephanie will allow you in.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. I have a number of questions, one of which is some that are focused specifically on this district, the second of which is sort of more general about what factors and criteria are being considered in connection with a focus on two districts. But I was surprised to hear that the board has already come to a consensus on these two. I understand that at the 2 meetings ago, which was in July, I think it's when the town posted some additional information. I saw the PDF focusing on the two districts, but as I recall, was this consensus arrived at the last meeting on August 7th? Because as I recall, it was not on the agenda. So I'd be.
They're right. There was a form of consensus, right? Because we had to go through, if you remember, a ways back, almost like 2 months ago or so, we went through the different options that the group that the town had put together had made a few recommendations on maybe like 5 or 6 areas. We chose to focus on the 2 areas that we're looking at right now, because one of the reasons that we made that whatever level of consensus you want to call it was because we received some money from the state to get a grant to do the modeling, which is required to for compliance. So we had to pick a couple spots that we thought were better, so that we could do the modeling in order to confirm compliance with the state model.
Right, but what I'm getting at was that consensus reached at the August 7th meeting? Because I didn't. When was that reached?
It was a prior meeting. Sorry, Dale, I don't have the exact date, but it was actually over a couple of meetings earlier in the summer when the board met.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
It was like at the end of the spring or the very beginning of the summer. Stephanie can look back, or Suzanne can help you with that.
What I just want to comment. What we haven't done, and we say that we were going to do, is to take all the proposed areas and do a pro and cons for each one. I think we say we are going to do it. So you are right to the conclusion that these two are the better options. But is that something we are going to do? It's a question for you, Peter, maybe. Is something we want to work on, or we just leave it as we reach this conclusion and we leave these two?
No, I mean, all the options are on the table. I mean, it takes more work. Well, you know, not maybe on our side, but it takes someone to run the numbers, right? So.
Yeah, and Peter, if I may, I mean, that
Make a
was,
vote for the town, you know, to recommend to the selectmen, everything is open here. But
And-
there is a
and-
process we have to go through, so we have
Yeah.
to, you know, kind of keep the end game in mind here.
so Peter, if I may, to Amos's question, I think Amos, maybe you weren't at one of the meetings, but the board did do that. We did go through each of the districts and the board talked about the pros and cons.
I wasn't at that meeting, but we didn't summarize that in writings and clear presentation of why we end up with the. I wasn't at the meeting, but we never put down methodically what were the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in a way, except that we were choosing which areas to focus on so that we could have use the grant money to have the consultants run the numbers for us, right? We didn't even, you know, we picked a few spots thinking, okay, these will probably work with the zoning, but we didn't know. And we still don't know because we haven't obtained the final results. If we find that the results don't work for us, we have to go move in a different direction. Well, that's where the board that decides that, right?
So if I could just jump in again, so what I'm hearing is that it's really sort of a current expression or an expression of current preference for these two districts. And I was pleased to see that there was a second district because previously it appeared that the focus for all 50 acres was going to be in the Five Corners area. But I would like to raise just a couple of issues about the consideration of the districts. Number one, that I think any consultant should also be doing some type of a traffic study. A traffic study was required for the 44 unit development for Sawmill Village. And here you're talking about adding several hundred. And it, regardless of any improvements on the road, you're still going to have a 2-lane road that is the only access for that area to get into Easton. It is going to make a huge problem on a road that is already problematic, where folks who access, including like the condominiums, lamplighter and gaslight, can't get out, can't even take a left because there's so much traffic. So number one, I think there should be a traffic study. Number two, as Stephanie is aware, I was very actively involved in the whole issue pertaining to the sewer district, and the betterments ultimately were assessed at just under 20,000 per betterment. We were told there was a limited capacity under the contract with the town of Mansfield, 165,000 gallons a day. And there was a limited amount of that capacity that was reserved for future privilege fees. And so it seems to me that they should also be taking a look at what are the impacts of this expected development? Because again, you rezone it, they will build, you know, with respect to the limited sewer capacity. And then in turn, I understand this is not your purview, but what the implications are with the privilege fees that all of these folks in the area had to pay. But what I really would like to see, as Amos had mentioned, would be, you know, sort of some expression in writing of what are the specific factors that causes the board to have a preference for these two districts as opposed to the other districts. And specifically what jumps out at me is the Roach Brothers parcel up there. It's large. It has a large 4-lane road that does not have traffic problems. And there are multiple ways then to get into Easton from there. And it also abuts an area where if there were to be an extension of the MBTA commuter line, that it would abut that property in the future. So it makes eminent sense. I really would ask the board to sort of state in writing, ultimately, if their preferences continues to be for those two districts, why those two and not the others, and specifically why not Roach Brothers.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with 1 and 3, and then maybe Stephanie can work on question number 2. So the traffic study, studies really, I think, you know, happen when a project is proposed, and Stephanie and the planning department have started some model zoning bylaw. And I was going to, as part of that, I was going to say that, you know, we'd require a traffic study for anything over X, maybe like 50 number of units. we can impose, it's by right, but we can impose reasonable conditions, right, and requests. So that would just be inherent to a, any kind of like larger housing or really business for that matter development. So does that answer the traffic study component?
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think that when it seems to me that there's going to be some legal problems if you're sort of requiring some of those
No,
things.
we do that. No, we can do that. There's no legal problem requiring an applicant to do a traffic study.
Well, what it's going to mean though is that the result, because of the requirements to satisfy the statute, is going to be that those traffic studies are just going to rubber stamp it, in my view.
Well, no, well, that's why we have peer review, which was going to be the second part of what I would propose for the traffic study component.
Okay.
As far as, now we'll go back to 3 in writing. So, well, first of all, we haven't decided anything. We had to pick the ones that we liked, and you can go back and look at the minutes. Suzanne has, she takes very good minutes. We'll look at that, what we already have there, and maybe that's something the planning department can put together. And that might be actually a good, once we get a little more, finalized, maybe that's a good thing we could put on the website. As part of this project. Now, Stephanie, how about the sewer wise? Do you have any information?
Okay, so if I may, I'd like to comment on all of that and kind of add on to some of what you're saying. So as far as the sewer goes, the guidelines make it clear, and Wayne can raise his hand if I'm speaking incorrectly, that it's not up to the town to decide whether there's enough sewer or not, that they will figure that out. But we do have capacity. But we will double check on that. So I think Dale, I think it's a good point.
Yeah, the betterment.
I will
really
check
our
with the
responsibility there, but,
DPW.
He brings it up, and we, of course,
Yep.
we need to be fair and,
Yep.
concerned
And
with
we
being
will
fair
check
to
into-
neighbors, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and Peter just said it, that as we go through, because what we're going to do tonight is go through the proposed language of the zoning. What might the zoning itself actually look like? What would be allowed there when you have multi-family? What number of stories, the setback requirements, that, and then explore and look at that, make sure the district is going to comply. And I think putting down and documenting why the board looked at these areas in particular and felt they made the most sense. I think that's a valid point. And as far as the traffic goes, that's something I'm going to look into as well. The board can require site plan review, and I think traffic may be covered under that, so that the board could require that a traffic study be done by any applicant. And as Peter pointed out, we would absolutely have it peer reviewed. And someone would need to respond to that, but that's a question I don't know if the guideline talks to in the site plan review.
Well, yeah, it'll be more if the guideline says you can't ask the applicant to do a traffic study, then I don't see why I would even bother voting for this in the first place, right? I mean, it's like, well, we're gonna work with this thing, but if it doesn't allow us to do what we need to do to put something good together, then I personally wouldn't vote for it, but that's just me.
People have to have safe access.
Right, but it's not only safe access, it's actually similar to the traffic study that was done for the the Sawmill Village on this. It's also taking into account the flow over and traffic in areas. Those traffic engineers were looking on South Street, when they were doing that. But
Yeah.
I just want to finish for just a moment. It would seem to me that even to the extent that the board is permitted to have the town is permitted having those bylaws or requirement for a traffic study, it would seem like at a minimum you'd want to get legal review in advance to make sure that in fact that's not going to put the town in a position of being running afoul of the requirements of the statute. But separate and apart from that, it would just seem to make sense that when choosing which districts to put this in, it's common sense to have a traffic study now to see if this is going to make sense. before when you're choosing the districts. Number two, on the sewer capacity issue, it's not just what the current flow is, because every one of the folks in this district has been assessed a betterment of almost $20,000 per. So the town has to set that aside for those folks, regardless of whether they're currently using it or not. And there was a limited amount, I think it was 20% of the 165,000 gallons per day were set aside for future privilege use. They were a specific number of betterments that were approved back then. So I would suggest that most definitely should be taken into consideration before deciding which districts are appropriate and which are not. Final question, and thank you for indulging me with the time. Can somebody just identify what the top 3 or 4 factors, for example, would be as to why focusing on the Eastman district and not the North Washington Roach Brothers district?
Oh, can I answer that, Peter? And then again, the board, and that was another point I wanted to make. That is a really kind of a restricted area. It's already been developed, and I know that that does not matter, but there's not really a lot of developable land up in that area. And its proximity, it's more proximate to the Stoughton train station, but that station is already overcrowded and overutilized. There's really no parking for people, so it doesn't provide that nexus to commuter services and commuter train services into town.
Well, I mean, I'll play along with there, just, not good or bad, but I mean, if the state can't figure out the parking at that thing and they're telling us to do, whatever, it's gonna be state zoning. Well, we can only do so much, right? We're not in charge of parking at train stations, they aren't even in our town here. So, I mean, yeah, it's a consideration, I suppose, but almost.
Yeah, the problem with those stations is the same for Mansfield and Stoughton.
Right.
There is no parking in Mansfield.
If you don't get there first, then you don't get a parking spot.
No, I try to use it really.
Gotcha.
To go to Boston. It's impossible. There is no parking. You need to park on the streets. Same thing on Stoughton. There is no public transportation to there. All this idea is maybe for the future. So have the state figure that out. Okay, and I think we need to articulate why the Roach Brothers is not. And if they say, at least that's where I understood, is you put forward a bylaw, and developing or not developing is not an issue for the town itself. If it is not developed, if it cannot develop for some reason, if all the area is wetlands and there is no where to build, I will agree.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like
if there is currently Roach Brothers and other buildings that you say, okay, they will go out of business and we will build the apartment. That's not our problem. That's not our problem. We can still make that area part of the bylaws.
And if I may just briefly, I agree with what was just said, and that's sort of the whole point of it. If there's a shift, whatever, somebody makes a decision, that's what they want to do. But if they don't, you still satisfy the statutory requirement without having to, load on hundreds of additional units. And for what it's worth, under this constraint as a matter of right, for what it's worth, I've been in favor of all of the increased, the changes in the zoning to increase the density. But it would give the ability, you could satisfy the requirements and still have the ability of the town to select areas in the manner which would be done to add additional density elsewhere. So just something to think about as the board is considering the different locations. But I hope that the board will take an active role in assessing the pros and cons for each of the proposed districts. But that dichotomy between the Eastman district and Roach Brothers just jumps out at me. Just didn't quite understand why that.
Yeah, no, those are really good points, right? And like, kind of, we're at the point where we had to pick, we had to look at it and make our best decision at that point, just to get the studies rolling along. But I mean, this thing's not done until the planning board votes to recommend it to town meeting, and then the selectmen do something with it, right? So we have time, and we're not going to try to be efficient here, but based on more input, we're going to continue to look at it and possibly make changes.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Stephanie, maybe. There is an issue with the sewer also in Washington Street for capacity?
Well, there is no public sewer for that area.
Well,
So
there's an
it
expanse.
would be on-site septic systems on the you're talking
Oh, Roach Brothers.
this
you mean.
North Washington
Yeah.
Street, Roach Brothers?
No,
Yes,
no,
no?
I'm talking Washington Street, the one that was-
Queesit Commercial District,
yes,
that was,
So there's additional capacity available there. It's owned by, kind of partially the town, mostly at this point, the land, but then the facility maybe is somewhat private, but there is more capacity in the Queesit district, right, Stephanie?
there is capacity, yes, and I'm trying to, let me look at that in a minute. And another point to be made is that if the train ever does go through and the town becomes an adjacent community, I mean, you can do it. You can do it. You could do it now in anticipation of the train coming through and then the town becoming a true MBTA community where you would have to have a district within it, at least a
Yeah,
half.
well, we're not gonna do way more, we're not gonna do much more than we need to. We're gonna try to do what we're supposed to do and put that up there for the town and do our best and see.
And I mean, again, in the future, if the town were to become an MBTA, so again, that's something for consideration. Do you want to do this now, hedging your bets? I don't know that I don't know that it's the best location. I look at it and I feel that there's more access to other services and amenities and potential job opportunities for people who might be living in some of the development that occurs as a result of the zoning. Then
Well,
there is,
really, I mean, the thing is that, like whatever, Eastman Street was the biggest one and it already has the sewer, right? Everything else was kind of like the smaller pieces like Belmont or even Roach Brothers isn't that big once you cut out the wetlands, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, it's either gonna be like 5 small, medium ones or one big one and a small one, right? So those
Yeah.
just based on like the land, that's what we were stuck with because
right.
that's what we had to look at there.
And again,
Peter,
another way
Peter,
of
we need to articulate these things and put it in writing.
Mhm.
We need to articulate these reasons and put it in writing.
Yeah, and just as to Stephanie's last point, in terms of access to services and jobs, I can't imagine anything better than being in the Roach Brothers area. We have tons of jobs over there, given the number of shops, more than I think you would have down here. And number two, the other access for getting into Easton on a 4-lane road and so on and so forth. There just to me seems to be a lot of reasons why that thing makes a lot of sense.
Right. Well, kind of like whatever. I mean, it's the MBTA zoning, right? So supposedly people that go to these places are going to get on some sort of public transportation and go to a job somewhere. So I wouldn't say
Right,
that.
but they're not getting there
Washington
anywhere
Street limits
They
like
can't get there anywhere
limits your
from
employment opportunity compared to one area or the other, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, we all live in Easton here. I mean, I think there are plenty of job opportunities for those who wish to seek them.
right, but the access to the MBTA and so forth, you actually have a realistic possibility that train gets extended into Easton. So if we're actually talking about not only satisfying the statutory requirements, but satisfying the spirit of what they were doing to try to provide more, housing and so forth, and for folks who might not otherwise be able to live in a town like Easton, you actually have a much more realistic possibility of that happening with the Roach Brothers site than you do with somebody trying to figure out how to get to Mansfield from the Avalon area. So that's my 2 cents.
Cool, great. Okay, looks like we have a couple hands raised. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
All right, Kathy's had her hand up the longest.
Okay, Kathy, you're first. You're next.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I just want to piggyback onto what Dale was speaking about. I'm a former trustee for Gaslight. I think Stephanie had communicated on our behalf earlier, but just very specifically about the traffic. There have been multiple accidents at the end of Gaslight, and I've spoken to a lot of the police that have tried to clean up. And, they keep on saying, oh, gosh, there's another one. We've had to replace the barrier again. There is proposed apartments and a restaurant with outdoor seating that's going in on the Tanana property. We also have housing on the Foundry property. We have an apartment complex that is proposed for the Shaw's, across from Shaw's. So, I'm very concerned. I'm certainly not anti economic development and fully support what the town has to do with the funds, but I'm very, very, very concerned about the safety of the residents in this area. I feel like it's becoming a Route 1. And I feel like there needs to be all of these traffic studies done before a lot of these proposals are gone through or are put through. In particular, I think you should stop the right on red, which is at Five Corners, allowing people to go from, I think it's 138, and then they take a right onto 106. So it's just a crapshoot. You can't take a left. It's just a steady line of traffic, and literally you sit there for 5 minutes.
That'll at least give you a chance at getting out of the road to the gas light, right? Just to break that up for a second before you do.
It is absolutely impossible, and we're really hoping that if with a light at Pequannock at the end of Pequannock, and then no more right on red, that won't be an issue. But it's so dangerous that a lot of people that live here are very, very concerned about their safety. We have old people that live here, and so I just hope the town is able to make some recommendations that are really good for the people that live in this area. Thanks, guys.
If I can piggyback to this comment and direct it to you, Stephanie, I think the answer that traffic will be analyze and study for each one of the applicants. I don't think that is what being asked by the people bringing this issue of traffic. I think, and I don't know how you do that, is you need to figure out what is the average or the full development of whatever can fit in each one of these zones for occupants and cars, if you will. Do the same thing with the other developments that are on 123, 106 there, that we are in South Street and across there. And someone can figure out what is the load based on, good guesses, I guess, or I don't know how you do that, but that is the study that is being asked to perform.
Now, are you proposing that we would do that for all the areas that were proposed by the committee?
I think you need to do something, and I am not an expert, but I think you can take this zone and use the same criteria for density, transform that in number of cars, if you can do that for each one of those that we propose. And someone needs to say, well, we are adding this amount of cars. And granted that the rush hours are the problems more than, it's not all day long, but someone can do that. There are people that know how to do that.
I just don't see personally how you can do it for a theoretical project that may or may not ever happen at some time in the distant future. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I hear what the two commenters are saying. I don't think that's something that even a traffic expert could figure out. I think basically what you're trying to determine is what is the maximum capacity based on what the zoning would permit and what would the traffic look like. Well, that assumes an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, wiping out Target and Big Y and everything. Right? You say, oh, okay, yeah, and then some sort of density.
That's level one of the analysis. It assumes that what the road conditions are going to be at the time the development happens. I mean, traffic patterns. I mean, the traffic experts, they look at these guidebooks that change every year based on the way that people behave. And I think it's a valid point. I'm not discounting the point. I just think that what we're actually able to do And what we'd like to do in a perfect world may not line up in this instance. So we're going to be dealing with imperfect information no matter what we do.
Yeah.
But-
Thank you,
but
Robert.
you-
Let's move to another attendee here so we can get some more ideas going along. I guess I'm not sure if these are.
So I
ordered-
think Denise Higgins was next. In fact,
Oh,
she was, and then we have Marie.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, Denise, I think you're coming online here. Oh, there you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a little bit confused because I've been attending these right along, and we went from the meetings that I've been most recently attending to all of a sudden a consensus of where these locations are. So I'm a little bit confused, and I have put forth that I wanted to be a participant in this progress. So it's a little alarming that it goes in this progression without the public input. But what I wanted to say is that Stephanie, you indicated that Stoughton is tapped out, but Mansfield Station is tapped out as well. What I'd like to know is, what is the total acreage of the Eastman Street area, and what is the acreage in the Belmont Street area? And what other spots may have been considered within the community, within the town? And then I have one follow. I have one follow-up.
Pretty much, not the trains, besides the train stations, that's not even really our decision, but we can think about it. But really, all that was considered over the course of 2 meetings in the late spring and the early summer. And I know there were attendees there. And we chose 2 spots where we would have use the grant money to have the consultants run the numbers for us to see if these 2 areas even were a good fit based on, for the state requirements. So I know whoever told you that, this is it, is wrong, right? Because it's not it. These are the 2 spots that we paid the consultants to run the numbers for us, because that's part of the process. I mean, we didn't pay them to run the numbers on every single one because first of all, we didn't have enough money. And number 2, that's where we started. So not sure if that answers anyone's question here. Or if
I think we should just point out, just because
Yeah.
it's come up a couple of times, we haven't even had public hearings on this yet.
Mhm.
This is all very preliminary. The public hearings will happen, but we had to put this in all these steps in place so that we can actually get to the public hearings in time, so that all of these comments, that I think people are making will become official and on the record.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's not ready to go, we're not going to move anything forward if it's not ready to go yet. So, we had to start somewhere, and this is where we started based on the funding that we received.
You're going before the town. The town meeting is scheduled for the fall in a very short amount of
No.
time. So
No, it's not.
That's not true.
So I feel like there's misinformation going on here. I'm not sure where you guys came up with these
Peter?
ideas, but Stephanie, maybe you can start. Give them a
Well,
little
just
baseline.
one comment, and I think we need to publicize this more.
Mhm.
We have put out a webpage dedicated to the MBTA zoning. And I'm quite certain it has the action plan with the timelines on it. So if it's not there, we'll make sure it gets
Don't
there.
worry. If that boat were in the fall, I wouldn't even be sitting in this chair right now. I'd be watching the Red Sox. So, all right, yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So
If it was in the fall.
If that decision were in the fall, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be
Yeah,
watching the
yeah.
Red Sox with Greg. So yeah.
So, and that's where information will be posted, that's where we posted the potential districts that were considered. Information about the zoning itself, both at the state level. There are links to the state website that gives everyone a better understanding of what the state is requiring, the process that we need to go to, what the compliance model looks like. And yeah, this is the time frame that we're operating under is a spring town meeting.
So whoever brought these ideas up, first answer is no, these are not, we haven't decided on anything yet, since we haven't even seen the numbers that we asked, that we have the consultant running for us. And 2, we're not voting on this in the fall at town meeting, so.
now that I'm corrected, can I just ask the question that I've been asking is, can you tell me what the total acreage for the Eastman Street area is that is considered in your gray area as opposed to the Belmont area?
Yeah, Stephanie, can you go back and try to look around for that? Remember we had I know we had like the beginning chart, and then we had the like the modified, the modification for the.
Right. Hold on, let me get rid of that.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that anytime we kind of have these little land masses, we should, the lots, we should maybe just put the acres on there with a little extra, a little more, information on those. Because we can look back at what we had, but.
So I don't have the revised, I don't have the version of this map with the total acreage. What I have is the original one that had the properties south, which in total was 55 acres.
So, yeah, we should be able to look at just view right here. And so
Well,
you're saying it was 55, then we took out the area
The
across the
ones
street.
on, yep.
So it's more like 45 or so now, but we don't want to really misstate anything, so.
Maybe it's less than that.
Mhm.
Well, we need that information, so we need it for the other one, because it's part of the numbers I need to run for compliance.
Oh, yeah, they definitely have it, right? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Peter, I have a question. Why don't we run the numbers for Rush Brother too? So we have that in our hands for making decisions.
Is that okay? So is that a new proposal that you're proposing right now? Is that?
Yeah, it doesn't kind of make sense to have another option in your hand if you have it.
Yeah. So well, if we want, in a couple of weeks, we'll have Stephanie get the map together, and the acreage for these two spots and the acreage and kind of associated data, and we can add that as part of our review. Is anyone else suggesting other locations as well, or should we stick with this possibly 3 now?
Yeah, because that Rush Brother has all the. I don't want to repeat.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it again. I mean, I recall that just by the time you cut out the wetlands, it was kind of like, okay, well, this is not really helping us much, but we can look at it again. People have questions. You have a question, so let's give it a shot.
Well, one is an opinion and feeling. The other one it has in your hand actual objectives.
Yeah, that's sort of what we were discussing at those meetings. But yeah, you're right. We didn't want to do it for every single one because we kind of eliminated some. But I'm up to it. I'm up for it. I mean, it's a big deal, and we're going to spend whatever time we have to. So.
Well, again, we have a time. The board has a time frame. A timeline that you have to operate within in order to get town meeting and have more robust public input sessions. And I thought that these were the 2 districts that the board chose to focus on and start.
Yeah, I mean, we had to pick 2 because that's what was, we had to pick something to see how the compliance model worked, right? I mean, we haven't even seen the results of the compliance model. So, if it's too much of a rush, we'll make a decision at that point. But yeah, if Amos is bringing that up now, I think we should.
I'm giving importance. I give importance to the input from the public. We're working for the citizens of Easton.
Yeah,
they come up and they bring these things up. You want to consider them, because if not, you are going to end up with the bylaws going to town and not being approved because the
right. I mean, whatever. I don't care for audit compliance. It takes 2 years. We're going to do a good job here, right? So, yeah. I think Maria is up.
Maria Wilson, 16 South Street. I have a question about how much more houses, how many more houses, apartments have been added to the 106 strip in the past 10 years. In Avalon, we have Old Forge, we have the Sawmill, we have the potential, we have the one going up just past Shaw's, we have the land that just sold on Foundry. We have 555 Foundry that turned into 2-family, which turned into 4 houses. There's another house on Foundry that subdivided their land, and that's going to be another house. So my question is that when you do these studies, none of these developments have been finished, but yet they're in the process of being finished. So how do you make a study based on the fact that we don't even know how many houses and how much traffic is going to be added just in the next 6 months or a year? So my question is, how many more houses have been added to the 106 strip in the past 5 to 10 years? So I would like, I know you're not going to have an answer for that for me tonight, but I would like to know, because we have increased our density tenfold down here.
Right, and we can
So
come
that's
back.
my first question.
So I can actually give a rough, pretty reasonable, accurate
Well,
estimate
it's just,
of that.
it's okay, you can, well, just take your time to prepare something that you can all look at, right? That's probably better process there.
So that's my first question. So it's very difficult to do a study based on the fact that we don't even have the cars traveling and all these new houses that have been created. So my second question is that I am paying a betterment, but I have not hooked up to my storage. And I want to make sure that when my septic system fails, that I would have a guarantee that I'm going to have be able to hook up to storage. So is that how the betterment works, that I have a guaranteed spot on the line?
So Peter, if I could answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I would like to answer, I'd just like to ask some clarification from Maria. When you're talking about the 106 strip and new housing along that strip, are you talking between Depot Street and Eastman Street?
No, I'm talking about the one just past Shaw's on the right-hand side, if you're heading towards Shaw's.
The apartments, yeah, next
Yeah,
to the
the
bank, right?
apartments there that are gonna be built.
Mhm.
Then
Okay.
there's gonna be a building with a next to the dentist is going to be storefront on the bottom and apartments up top, correct?
There is a proposal for that.
Yep. Then you have the sawmill.
Yeah,
Then you have, I think it's 547 that bought the yellow house, restored it, sold like 2 pieces of land so that 549 can build another house on South Street. Then you have the 20 acres of the Buckley land, the 16 acres of Buckley land that turned into 20 houses. Then you have the sawmill. Then you have Mike Harrison. Oh, then you have 555. That was a 1-family turned into 2-family that divided the lots that turned into 2 more houses. Then you added the sawmill, and then Mike Harrison is now subdivided his land. And that doesn't even include what has gone up in Avalon. So my question is, how do you do a study when all of this is still being built? So in 2 years from now, 106 is going to have a completely different look and feel with traffic.
okay, so again, Peter, if I could answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The developments and Maria mentioned Sawmill 3 times, but that's about 105 units, residential units. So you have, it's 26 at 424 Foundry Street, that's the apartment complex. And then you have the new duplex or condominium at the corner of Quanticut Avenue and Foundry Street. So I may be 1 unit off on that, but that's 105 units. And you are correct that Foundry Street is going to look very different in the future. One of the reasons for that is that there is a project that's being advanced, and I think we've talked about this with the board for roadway improvements for Foundry Street to add pedestrian accommodations, bicycle accommodations, and traffic management. And those type of improvements, I have to say, do look at potential future development. I will verify that. But I believe for the state to invest in a project of that size, they do want to know what the potential future development might be.
Stephanie, will that be still 2 lanes?
I believe the answer is yes. I haven't seen draft plans yet. Those are something that as they're developed, they will be shared with the public.
It doesn't change much if you keep the same capacity on the road.
Yeah,
You
just
cannot
once you
put more-
go 4 lanes, it's just not
Yeah.
walkable anymore. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
And you cannot do more than 2 lanes there.
Actually, 138 is not bad, but it's just that's
Right, so that, my
Different
point
things,
is that 106 can't become 4 lanes. 138 could easily become 4 lanes. And to put 500 more apartments on our end is just ludicrous as far as I'm concerned. And when you talk about no parking at Stoughton, I moved here 30 years ago. There was no parking at the Stoughton train station. And 30 years ago, there was no parking at the Mansfield train station. So that's like a mute issue. There's never been parking at the train station. So not to look in an area because there's no parking at the train station, that needs to be revisited. So that's one point. My other point is that we were told in the spring that we were going to get a traffic light at the corner of Quanticket. Here we are going into the fall, and I don't see any traffic light coming anytime soon. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like. I dropped my sister-in-law off. She lives at Lamplighter, and I am not exaggerating. At 20 of 5, it took me 9 minutes to take a left on 106 going towards South Street. 9 minutes to get out of Lamplighter. And we're going to increase more density on a road that can't handle it. It's just like, it's absurd to me that we would even consider to put 500 more houses down there or 500 apartments. Because that could be 1,000 more cars if there's 2 cars to our apartment. That's craziness. So that's my other issue.
Just one little point there is that, you know, and I don't like this any more than anyone else, but you know, is that I know, you know, Big Y and Target aren't just gonna you know, all sell out to apartment developers, you know, even in the next 20 years, right? I mean, it's possible, but probably unlikely, you know. But just to point out, it's like it's not as if this is someone's like coming up with a proposal for an actual 500 unit, you know, development. It's you know, it's
no, and I understand that, but the fact that you're focusing on that area and not focusing on other areas as well leaves me unsettled, because we've had a lot between the betterment and all this density. We had taken on an extreme amount on this end, and I feel like we need to share the wealth within the town. We can't take on any more than we already have. It's difficult as it is. So, and my other question is that before this goes to town to vote, I would respectfully request that these meetings happen in person so that we can gather people and everyone would know and the message would go out, because Zoom meetings are great. I mean, for the people that pay attention, but there needs to be a whole town input into these hearings in order that we make a good decision for the town, not just based on, 25 people that participate in the meetings via Zoom. So I would.
So there's some public input sessions coming up. There's all on the website that Stephanie has mentioned. And we've talked about possibly maybe like having some in person and some remote planning board meetings. Have to talk to the members about that. We might sometimes Rob just barely makes it back from Boston. We don't want to lose a good person, right? That's it's hard spot to fill, just because we decided that we were going to force people to go in person to every meeting. So it's a balance there, given kind of the way, work and things have changed. But, Stephanie and I talked about the other day, and, our board hasn't had a conversation about in-person meetings since I became chair, a few weeks ago. But, it's definitely something that we're going to talk about.
Good, because I think I really feel like things get lost when people don't show up in person. And I do think that, it kind of squashes rumors and it puts everybody on the same page and everyone's seeing the same thing at the same time. So I do agree with that. And my only other question is that when you talk about that you had to pick 2 areas for consultant to focus on, so once the consultant comes back with their information, can you say, oh, we want 2 more areas to look at, or is it 2 and we're done? How does that work?
I know I've just heard some word from other people that might be in different departments in the town that there are resources for us to obtain more funding to look at more areas.
Okay, perfect. Because I just don't want it to be like, okay, this is it and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think this was, I was surprised that the 2 took so long, right? And I guess the summer being the summer, everyone takes a vacation or 2, and not us, maybe just like whoever was working on it in the consultant side, and it might 2 months might seem like a long or a short time, but it's 2 months, right? So, but yeah, it's still possible. Anything's possible here, and I could be the person that dislikes this more than anyone else in the room right now. So, I'm not the one that's going to try to force this on anyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
From the farm up to Chestnut Street gets to.
I have no idea.
Cool. Well, that was interesting. Stephanie, want to move on to the next picture, next page?
Yes. And at some point, I think it would be very helpful to talk about what the zoning looks like, because I think that will be easier to have a subsequent conversation about districts if the board is still contemplating
That was a
potential
good
other
conversation
districts.
there,
So
so,
here we go. Let me do this. Okay, so can everyone see that? This is the
Yep.
potential Belmont, Washington
They want to turn.
district. I'm sorry, who is,
That's like making Big Y into 500.
sorry,
I think there are some people have been putting some information out there that might not be completely accurate. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, honey.
okay, someone.
Denise is still Denise and Kathy.
Lord. Sorry about that. Usually people close themselves off. Okay. And so this is the potential Belmont, Washington Street area. This is 19 acres in total. It includes the former market, it is still the marketplace. They actually own this parcel of, the parcel actually extends over here. This is an underutilized area. This blue area is a detention basin, but the rest of this area is.
Right, that's the parking lot behind Wendy's. Yeah.
Right. This is where Belmont Arms is located. There is a 34 unit apartment complex here and about half of those units here, probably 16 to 18 units pre-existing. And then you have a mix of other commercial properties.
Stephanie, can you remind me why we eliminated the lot on the middle there?
This is this is IBC. It is not part of the industrial park, but it is a thriving manufacturing business. And
so, but yeah, I guess my point here.
I mean, could that be included? I don't see why not.
This kind of has to be like kind of thing that's still on the table. I don't care about any deadlines. If we have like 6 people from one neighborhood saying, "Oh, this is too much for our neighborhood," and we have a big white lot here that could be included in this one, this kind of stuff has to be on the table.
I say if we have Target included and Rush and the Big Y and everything included on the other one, I don't see why we will exclude that one. I mean,
Well, yeah, it'd be more like trading off, right? So if you're gonna include that and look at other areas, right, then you would reduce what would be down in the Eastman side, right? I mean, that's the only solution. We're not gonna go over just
right,
to-
right,
but yeah.
and you can do that actually,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I
balance
think
it, and balance the load.
Mhm.
I'm,
Yep.
I'm sorry, what was that again, Peter?
Oh,
What you just said and,
well, I was saying that, yeah, I mean, but, so as far as we were talking about, still possible, further changes, I mean, is one where we could look and, get in light of, some of the public input we've received where you could, we could switch that, think about, maybe not decide right now, but, switch that to be included and then, eliminate a similar, amount, over on the Eastman side, if we wanted to, so.
The one thing that the board, that we need to remember is that at least one of the sub-districts needs to be a contiguous 25 acres
Yeah, right.
in total.
Mhm.
So,
Is this contiguous because you have a
And
driveway?
again, right, and I mean, again, Eastman is pretty much, it's just.
no, and it's only 19 acres, but if you added that, it would be contiguous. I can do a quick lookup. You see.
I don't think why we eliminated it. I don't.
Well, I think it's because it was in industrial and it's the industrial park and you didn't want to zone away the industrial park. I mean, that could be.
I still don't. I know you say that twice, but so the target is commercial. We didn't exclude it because of that. So what is the difference?
I'm just echoing what I think the board.
I mean, I'm not, you were at the meetings too, right, where we had conversations about it and we, came to, that point where we had to choose, some things to run some numbers on, right? And there was only so much, money there.
Well, if you look at the map, look at the map, and that area is almost, I don't know, a third of all the other area, and it's excluded without a good reason, in my opinion. So,
I mean, one of the things with the zoning, and when we get to it, is that these are overlay districts. So you can keep the underlying zoning. And then when the parcel is developed, it's developed based on what the developer chooses. So if they choose to do the multifamily zoning by right, then that's the zoning they're working with, and they're constrained by what's allowed under the multifamily. If they choose to develop under the underlying zoning, then the underlyings, they can choose to develop that. And
so it's a limitation for whoever wants to develop that. But is it considered contiguous when you have that driveway through?
no, and that wasn't considered the 25 contiguous acre district. I think
more of the reason to include that industrial.
I'm sorry. Was that a question for me, Amos?
I didn't understand.
No, it's a comment. More of a reason to include it and make it contiguous. I don't know if you have time to change the calculation. That place is ideal for apartments.
What makes that one ideal? I don't live too far, and we already added how many units at Queesit? I'm kind of playing the game there, but I mean, it's somewhat true. But I guess you could say it's right next to the highway, right? It's not next to a train station, but it's next to a highway.
Yeah, traffic there is not that great either.
Yeah, and don't forget, we already have a lot of zoning in this whole area for, right, I mean, for other apartment type things, even though we have a car dealership down.
So we have lemons, let's make lemonade.
All right, well, there's a consideration. I wasn't against that at the beginning.
I think the,
But I
the
think what
logic,
we, I mean,
the
you know,
logic
it's not
saying,
kind of decide, but we need a little structure here where we're kind of, you know, it's not just like, okay, let's take a peek at the maps and then have a 2-hour discussion about it either, right? So, yeah. But I think we've got some pretty good input, maybe a few other ideas that we could do on the map side of things. You guys want to move on to the actual the zoning bylaw for a little bit?
I will take that as a yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the way we were looking at the zoning, and we actually looked at Lexington's model because it seemed pretty simple and straightforward. So right now, section 23540 of the Easton zoning code is multifamily zoning. But I think any of the members that are really familiar with this, it really basically prevents any multifamily zoning from being built. You have to have 60,000 square feet of land for the lot, and then you can have up to 3 dwelling units, but you're limited to 3 bedrooms. So again, it pretty much zones against multifamily. So the idea is this isn't effective anyway. Eliminate that and then adopt or replace it with the community housing overlay district.
No, I'm saying just on the left column, that is our.
This is your existing.
That's our Eastman Street zoning.
Yes, that's the current
Okay.
multifamily
Right,
zoning.
that's what I thought. Okay.
And everything in the left corner, you'll
What'd you say
see
it
as
wasn't
I go
working?
down.
I wasn't sure what did you say? Did you say it wasn't working, or it just wasn't? It just doesn't work with the
Well,
new-
it effectively disallows multifamily zoning just because of how restrictive it is.
You mean,
I mean,
you mean
again,
the zoning that's accommodated like a 20-unit apartment building is not allowed?
no, that's part of the Furnace Village District zoning.
Okay, right. And
Yeah, so we're not proposing, I think there's a minor change, a very, very minor
Right.
change, and
so, I mean, the two zones we're looking at already have somewhat accommodative multifamily zoning, right? Queesit and Furnace Village.
correct,
Okay, all right, just wanted to get that.
but this section effectively zones against it, so.
The zoning bylaw, yeah, the town zoning bylaw and the apartment, like, section of that. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and this preceded the
Hmm?
Queesit and the.
Oh, yeah, that's obviously just made to zone against
Yeah.
apartments, okay?
Yeah.
So let's look at what we're proposing here, what you've put together.
Yeah, so the idea is rather to even try to just fit this in, let's
Yeah,
just
that could be like
completely
40 years old.
replace
Yeah,
it.
mhm.
And we start off the purposes which were defined by the MBTA Review Committee back in 2022, the goals and guiding principles, which are to provide family housing and ensure compliance with MGL Chapter 40A 3A, which is the MBTA community zoning, promote multi-family housing near retail sales and services, office, civic, and personal service uses, and to contribute to Easton's economic health while helping address the ongoing housing crisis in a responsible manner, again, kind of planning these areas and where they should be located in a thoughtful way. Support existing commercial centers conducive to mixed-use development. Encourage development in areas adjacent to or containing commercial development, contributing to walkable and sustainable neighborhoods, proximate to potential work opportunities, shopping, entertainment, recreation, and similar amenities. And I promise, once I read through these, I'm not going to read through every section of this, but I will summarize those sections. To protect the town's priority open space areas and critical natural resources and provide outdoor recreation and open space opportunities are within or adjacent to the district. Contribute to the ongoing goal of providing affordable housing, both to maintain Easton's SHI status and to ensure needed affordable housing is available with, and we have X'd out right now the percentage of units that would be required to be affordable and the AMI, because that's the fiscal impact, the fiscal feasibility analysis that's being done by the consultant right now to determine if the districts that Easton is proposing, and based on the proposed draft zoning, whether it would be fiscally feasible to allow more than the maximum 10%, which is allowed by the regulations. So the board will recall that you can require 10% of the units to be affordable under the MBTA community guidelines. But anything over that needs to be justifiable under this fiscal analysis. Okay. Any questions on that? Then it's being proposed as an overlay district. So as I said earlier, it won't replace existing zoning districts, but would be superimposed over them. And the way we've written this is such that if the board decides to adjust a district or to adopt a new one, let's say it gets adopted and things are going really well and the town wants to adopt a new district, you could adapt it very easily to the zoning. And again, this is one of the reasons I wanted to go through it, because we've looked at it with both the Eastman Foundry Street potential district and the Belmont district in mind, but I think it would work with any of the other potential districts if the board decided to go in that direction. So, and again, the underlying zoning would still be in place. So a developer would choose which they would develop under. Once they've chosen the community housing overlay option, they can't mix and match that. But we do have a incentive for using commercial in a project, which again is allowable. So you have the procedures and regulations. This talks about site plan review by the board. The board may adopt regulations to facilitate layout, building design, and outdoor amenity spaces. That's what's specifically stated in the guidelines that the site plan review for this district can cover. And that's why I was talking about the traffic study. I don't know that having that as a requirement would be allowed, but we'll raise that question.
Most probably not.
Now, with who are you gonna raise that with?
It's not DHC anymore. It's the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Okay, so even though the bylaw and the guidance says that we can have reasonable conditions, you're no one sure if we can even ask for do a traffic study.
Yeah, the guidelines talk specifically to site layout, building design, and outdoor amenity spaces.
Sure. Okay, well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
That's the case.
Okay.
State did not do a good job with it at all.
So, and then, just to be very clear, all developments under this section will include multifamily housing. All residential uses under this section shall be multifamily housing. So if you're going with the overlay district, the community housing overlay district, you're building multifamily housing. It does say developments may also include uses permitted in underlying zoning district. However, the following uses are not permitted: motor vehicle, kennels, parking lot, self-storage.
Sounds good enough.
Yeah. And we're going to need to test that out again. I might ask Wayne we'll come back to that in a minute and ask Wayne to kind of weigh in on it, because I think we may need to tweak that language a little bit, because I think that's in reference to the mixed use density bonus, which I'll get to in a minute. Then you have the affordability requirement. Again, we talked about that. Any development containing, and we're proposing 8 or more dwelling units, have at least whatever the percentage is of the dwelling units to be affordable. And where a fraction of the dwelling unit is required for the calculation, the amount of the required dwelling units, affordable units would be rounded up. Okay. And then we make sure that we state that as required for affordable housing units, affordable units to count towards the Easton's subsidized housing, they must qualify as local action units. And we've added this language, the board added this language to the regulations a couple of years ago. This is to ensure that the developers know that they need to comply with the local action unit process or requirements. And that means that they have to conduct a marketing plan that includes the lottery. They have to work with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to make sure that the units will count towards the SHI.
Yep.
Okay, the mixed use density bonus. So I'm going to go back a minute. Everybody knows that the district needs to be able to accommodate a minimum of 15 units per acre, and that the total overlay district has to accommodate the 10% of the town's 2020 permanent housing stock, which for Easton is 9,130 thereabouts. So 913 units. That's not laid out specifically. There's nowhere in here where it says, you know, you can build up to 15 units per acre.
Well,
Instead,
put it in there though, I think.
well, this is how it's determined. And again, we were using Lexington's example, and so the note I have is the number of units per acre will be determined by the development capacity of the site under the associated zoning parameters, which are the number of stories, the height, the setbacks, parking, and the topographical site constraints, such as wetlands, floodplain, etc.
But yeah, I mean, I'd rather just make the maximum the state requirement. In addition to the parameters.
The thing with that is, in order.
Well, yeah, I mean, we always have that. I mean, whoever's idea was to not have it, I don't agree with it. I don't know.
We actually don't talk about units per acre. It's by nature of what you can construct. So you can have one primary structure on a lot.
Okay, well, sometimes we do, and you know.
And that's stated in the code.
Mm-hmm. No, we have so many units per acre, things like that, and it's right in the bylaw, you know, it's right there. It's not that we don't have a unit per acre or a unit per, you know, some sort of units per something in our bylaws. But I don't know. What do the Robert, Amos, Mickey? What do you think? Should we do you prefer a limit, or do you prefer no limits?
I like the flexibility of this language. I think it kind of lends itself to and I'm again new on this board, but I just like kind of the flexibility here than absolute numbers.
I know. I like flexibility. Just found in the past that when you set a limit, they go for the maximum limit, and when you don't set a limit, they might just fall along the same pattern there and go for the maximum based on the site parameters, right? That's the way I'm looking at it, but I don't know.
But the site parameters will constrain it. So if you have a smaller sized lot, you may not be able to do 15 units on that lot.
Yep, no, I get that. Yeah.
I mean, I think it.
If you have a big lot, you can make one really big. You can make one really big building and have a lot of units in it. I mean, you have to find parking, right? But besides that, you can do some underground parking and really go big there. So I'm just telling you, you know, what I think there. So.
This is not clear. It can be interpreted. And I'm not sure where the loophole will be.
Well,
But
I think if we go to the mixed use density bonus, I think it makes,
Yeah.
it might make
Okay,
more
yeah.
sense.
You know, just
Because,
remember that, you know, we have 5 or 6, just 5 or 6, people from the community here who have, I guess, kind of started to voice their opinion about density too. So to not have
Yeah.
anything about density in there, I mean, if the town wants, if people want to pass this, I would suggest adding some sort of density limit. If you don't want to pass it, then don't. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, it might be
So-
that certain people can get half the town to vote for anything, but I might not be the
Yeah.
case here.
Yep, so let's go to, and that, I mean, it's a good point because, well, intrinsically, it may actually be self-limiting the way it's written. If people don't understand that, then it can be self-defeating when you go to get the vote. So
Yeah.
let's go to the dimensional standards for a minute, then we'll go back to the mixed use density. So the proposal is no restriction on number of units per lot, meaning the number of dwelling units.
Mhm.
No restriction on the minimum lot size or frontage. However, you'd have your setbacks would be front 30 feet and your side and rear 25 feet. Where they might be proposing mixed use, this would give a little more incentive because your front would have a 15-foot setback and then you'd have a 20-foot side and a 25-foot
Yep.
rear. And the 20-foot side, I did talk with the fire chief to make sure that there would be sufficient room for, especially in a commercial application, for the fire apparatus to get around the building. Then you'd state, there'd be no parking in the front yard setback and it would be landscaped. And then the maximum building height would be, for your residential buildings, it would be 3 stories at 45 feet. And then with mixed use, which is where you'd get the bonus, the mixed use bonus, you'd have 5 stories and a 75-foot cap. And then the maximum number of stories is 5.
And and we put that into the modeling, right? Is that the modeling is considering that?
We ran it at 4.
Yeah, I like 4 better than 5. Who said 5?
It's a suggestion.
Okay,
It-
so
it- for the-
so
for
you and
the
Wayne came. I just
mixed
wanna know,
use
I'm
bonus.
just asking. So you and Wayne came up with 5, right? Is that where that came from?
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
just trying to understand what
Yep.
what this came from. Okay.
And
so
Wayne, hold
for-
on, Wayne is, Wayne is
Mm-hmm. Yep.
raising his hand, so I'd like to,
Hi there, thanks, everybody. I'm assuming you can hear me, yes?
Yep, please introduce yourself.
Thanks. Hi, I'm
starting with
Wayne
that,
Butler. I work with Stephanie here in the planning department. We ran 4 stories of residential.
Mhm.
And in the previous conversation, I think at the end of June with the planning board, the conversation was for mixed use, consider going up to 5 if you have commercial.
Yeah, I think I kind of felt like maybe we said 3 to 4 of maybe we just said we put it up for discussion
Yeah.
later. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
so we plugged in here as placeholders 3 as your residential.
Yep.
And then what could you actually have that would in fact incentivize commercial?
Yep.
Because the point of the zoning, of course, is you have to show that you meet the compliance model as of right, just for the residential. It doesn't, you can have as options increased density for mixed use, but what would actually get people to develop the mixed use, given how difficult it can be to get financing for commercial
Yeah,
uses.
yeah. I mean, I'm just I can kind of more personally just picture 4, but when I picture 5, I kind of don't like the idea, and I get the feeling that it might be other people that that feel the same
More
way.
of a practicality argument, though. I can see what Wayne and Stephanie are proposing here. It's if you go for 4, you're giving them an extra commercial unit, but the commercial unit might be more of a problem for the developer. And is that going to encourage them to just stick with the 3 on the residential? I mean, I think by maybe offering them that extra that extra floor, you might spur some commercial development, which I think is I think that's one of the things that we're trying to achieve here. I mean, I kind of was biting my tongue a little bit earlier with the comments, but candidly, I think that with all these changes afoot in that area, the time is ripe for further development down there, and I think that's all really a positive. I mean, everybody recognizes that there could potentially be traffic issues, and that does need to be addressed in some fashion. But I don't think just saying, well, we've done enough here is the solution. I think the solution is to have the discussions that we're having and to try to stimulate real legitimate commercial development in that area so that we can actually get something that's walkable. People can walk to some of the beautiful resources in that area, which is something that I'm astonished by the fact that you're unable to do that in that area. You can barely reach the pond down there, New Pond or Long Pond or whatever it is. And some of the walking paths behind where Rick Lincoln's development is going to go. I think if you can actually spur some development in that area, and I think that this density bonus kind of feeds into that pretty nicely, I think that you can really, the sky is the limit for that area. And, that's kind of my view, but I definitely felt the anxiety from some of the people of that area. So it's obviously something we have to consider.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, just Wayne and Stephanie, on the 70 feet, if we're going to consider it, I just remember like a kind of conversation when when Wayne was like a commercial architect, right? I think I forget if like 15 was kind of like the minimum, like per floor height, kind of like once you get into these bigger buildings. So I'm just saying like 3 at 45, right? That's 15 per floor. Then you get to 70, and that doesn't quite. It's not exactly 15 times 5.
We talked to a building, and
the
ground floor commercial, when you have a mixed use building, ground floor commercial is taller.
Yeah.
To accommodate all the HVAC and commercial stuff.
Okay.
And also for a potential 5 floors of mixed use to incentivize it, we're contemplating, would we step back floors 4 and 5 by some amount, like 20 feet or something, so that you don't have a sheer wall of 5 stories. But
pretty good. Yeah. Any other comments on the height?
No, but I did want to note here, because when we talked about it, and I don't see it in here immediately, and Wayne, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought
number 8,
if it was mixed use development, that the first floor needed to be commercial. And
no, because it can be either in that building or in a separate building. You might have, for financing purposes, if you have a large parcel.
Right, yeah.
Do we have it in there somewhere?
We do have it in there somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the idea being, if you have a very large parcel and construction financing being what it is, maybe you're actually looking at 2 buildings, apartments here and a separate building for, your Starbucks or something like that.
And we're also hearing that from developers who are doing mixed use development, because it is being done, but that the idea, and I think I certainly was guilty of this, you have kind of the vision of the village neighborhood with mixed use, with commercial on the bottom and residential on the top floor. And, in the old days that might have been a restaurant, but most people nowadays do not want to live above a restaurant with the noise and the food odors, but they might do well with a separate building that is a restaurant or some other activity.
Yeah. Okay, then just definitions. Well,
yeah,
pretty straightforward. Well, I think we needed to add something about landscaping and buffering. We can do that. I'm pretty sure it was right in the guidance or right in the law. So I don't see why they would say that if they change their mind later, that's entirely possible.
I'm just making a
on the
note.
density thing, I really kind of strongly more favor just putting that state limit somewhere in the density. And
Yeah.
just to make everybody happy, including me.
I would,
Okay.
if I could add a little, sort of context to that. Maybe we sort of put a pin in that for a future decision, because so we're just now starting to our own selves engage with the model, which is a little difficult to run.
Yeah.
And the model is structured, we believe, to back into the density yield based on the parameters.
Right.
So we have to put in the parameters and then tweak those parameters to see what the density yield is. And once we get a sense of that, then maybe it would make sense to put that density in and see what that does to the model.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, they really didn't help us with that model, right? They're like, okay, here, do this, and here's the most complicated model you could possibly contemplate.
It is not easy.
Objective, right?
Yeah. And because it has the excluded land, which is not developable. It takes into account your setbacks, your parking ratios, your heights.
But you can explain that, right? You can explain the process of which will you arrive to the density without the actual calculation, right? So you can say this is the thing that you should consider in order to achieve that number that is your density. This, and that.
So how about on that? How far along are the models for the two that we looked at first?
The consultants are finished with their contract for us, and additional runnings of the model did not yield usable results because we kept in a density cap. So if you have a density cap of 15 units an acre with 3 floors, how many units do you have? And then if you add another floor, how many units do you have? Guess what? You still have 15. So it was actually not a helpful exercise in additional iterations. And they were also using it, I think, on the earlier version of the Foundry Eastman district. So what we need to do is start running the model ourselves. And Stephanie and I are just now engaging with what that involves and trying to get the data in so that we have something that is, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of flexible, that you can change different parameters. What does it look like with this many parking spaces versus that many parking spaces?
I know it's complicated, but it's sort of like an Excel where you can plug in a new number and things will
run.
Exactly so. And so it's getting it set up to actually run different iterations of the parameters, and then that'll give us a sense of what the density looks like. Because you also have parcels of different sizes. So if you have 50, like a 5-story building, for example, on a 10,000 square foot lot, you're not actually going to build a 5-story building, because you also have to provide the parking, and you have to provide wastewater treatment on site because you're not in the sewer district, for example. So it will actually influence, I think, what gets developed. And then one thing I want to keep emphasizing in every conversation we have as we consider potential locations, potential parameters, this is not a mandate to build. It's just an as of right zoning, so that if someone wants to redevelop a parcel and believes it would make sense to do it with this multifamily zoning, they can do so within the zoning that's adopted. But it is not a mandate to produce anything at all.
That's why a maximum build out like traffic study for the 10 locations just would have been a big waste of money, right? But just back on the traffic study thing again, Steph, I at least, I mean, Steph, you'll ask about that, right? And I mean, see what they say.
I'll ask as it relates-
Get a good response from them. Don't just have them say yes or no. If they say no, ask why. I mean, I'd be like, are you crazy? We can't do a traffic study. If you know,
Well, I think that the question I'm going to ask, because I think it's a realistic one, is the planning for the roadway improvements, Foundry Street, taking into consideration projected future traffic volume? I mean, that's going to be my starting question.
Then I mentioned like, you know, requiring a traffic study if and when like someone proposed some new apartments under this new zoning.
Yeah.
If it were to pass.
Oh, yes, for the
Yeah, that's
housing,
kind of,
yeah,
but the Foundry Street.
for the
question.
executive office, yes, I have that as a takeaway.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for adding some.
I think one of the participants asked a very good question. Is you can do a traffic evaluation based on the snapshot and call it today, and a snapshot of 1 year from now when all the current developments will be finished. That you can do.
Right, you just can't do it. We just can't do a traffic study based on a full build out plus all the other you know, whatever happens in
Correct. But you can do that. You can do that, and that will give you certain results about the capacity of these 2-lane 106, for example, or any other. And that is an important point. It's a snapshot that tells you that you either are already overloaded or not. Because if not, we are talking on the air. Nothing is there has been evaluated and calculated and putting in writing.
Well, yeah, it has. When they're redoing the roadway now, they probably did a traffic study. I mean, it's not yet, but.
Are you saying you can do a traffic study for what the conditions are going to be in a year?
Yeah, you are.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, you can do a traffic study today by measuring. Okay,
Well,
you don't need anything. Yeah, they do that all the time.
Well, it's a hypothetical.
And the people, I believe the traffic engineering is able to say if you are going to add 106 or whatever number you came up with, Stephanie, of units, and say that average 1.125 cars per unit. There you go. This is the amount of cars that will be added to the traffic on this area. You can most probably on the safe side, whatever these experts do this, will say that rush hours when these cars go to work or whatever those things are, they know. I think I will assume that traffic expert will be able to do that. So my answer is, I believe you can do in a year or not. Don't call it a year. Call it all this development, South Street, Sawmill, that are the big ones. And I don't know if there is another big one. Just have the big ones and figure out what that means.
So the traffic engineers can do hypotheticals based on what they would look at, Bob, is they look at what your zoning is today. What would the likely future development be of these particular areas? And they try to project it out on modeling that they have, but it is a hypothetical and it is a projection of what could be based on the current zoning, existing development, likely redevelopment in that area. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot. People think, well, 44 units of housing at Sawmill and even the 20 units at South Street is a lot. But when you start looking at the volume of traffic that's flowing through Route 106, that amount is a very small percentage of the traffic going through, and really unlikely has a significant impact on the overall traffic. If you started doing a lot more development, yeah, feasibly, that could have a significant difference. So if you,
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's still, once you add up all this new apartments, it actually does make a difference, because you say
Yes.
20,000 cars a day, right? Something
Yes.
like that, on a busy
if you're
road.
talking
Okay,
500,
Then you get 1,000
900,
units with 2 trips a day,
right,
that's 10% of your existing traffic volume going back and forth somewhere, so it does add up. I mean, it's not, 1,000 units makes a difference in traffic. I don't care how many people are commuting back and forth from Rhode Island and stuff, but yeah.
yeah, no,
It's not, is a, reason, is a large number, so.
So this is what I'm taking away for the next meeting. Because we do need to continue the conversation. We need to continue to answer questions and move forward. So what I have for takeaway, we want to start documenting the reasons that the board was considering the 2 potential districts that are being focused on at the moment. People want to understand whether there's enough capacity in the sewer to support the type of development that's being discussed. I think that there are definitely answers to that. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but also want to ensure that if they're paying a betterment fee and they haven't tied in yet, that they would be given, that they would have the opportunity to tie in, and that their capacity would not be restricted. I don't know what the answer is to that. We do have a question about the traffic concerns, so I have an initial question and then we can go from there. And we will go back to the, see if we can get an answer from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities as to whether that's something that the board can look at as part of site plan review. Then
What might be interesting is you can even ask it in a different ways. You say like traffic studies, or what are some other components that after like more like consideration, some towns have actually been allowed to do, to include in there, right? See what I mean? So we're not just ask a blanket question, but focus on the traffic study, but just kind of feel them out and see what else they've actually done in specific situations when a board wanted to review this thing or that thing, right? So it'll just be easier than pulling all the any approved bylaws or something.
Yeah, and then we're going to run the models for the districts based on, as a starting point, based on the dimensional standards that we've outlined in this draft, and bring that back to the board.
Yeah.
Is there anything I've missed?
That's pretty good. And maybe we just update the maps, and including another look at Roach Brothers with the upland area.
I'm sorry, what was
No,
that?
and maybe just kind of the same maps that we had today, but also just another quick look at long look at Roach Brothers.
Okay.
Right? We have to show the upland area, right, to exclude the little wetlands at Belmont.
Well, the modeling is supposed to remove the wetlands.
Okay.
That's part of the,
I mean, I think once we look at Roach Brothers and we exclude the wetlands, we're gonna see that, okay, well, that's whatever, that might maybe we can include that, but it's not gonna make a big huge difference because it's not that much area once we do that. But it might help balance the load there. So
yep.
we had the public here, we had Amos reiterate.
Yes, that's correct. We should consider it. Yeah. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least you would have.
I'm right. We can't, now that Wayne and Stephanie do this, we can't just ruin their fall, just have them running models after model. But when something comes up, we can we'll do our best.
Well, and again, we've shared the timeline with everyone, and we need to be sensitive to that because we still want to make sure we do have enough time for some good public outreach. Be able to answer people's questions, and move towards the hearing stage. Just thinking out loud here. But I mean, I have to, I appreciate the comments that we received from the members of the public who were here
Yeah,
tonight.
me too. Yeah, cool. All right, yeah, as well, if anyone else had any other little notes that maybe we missed, I just send Stephanie an email without including the rest of us. Okay.
Did we decide what we do with industrial building in the middle of the district that we pick?
What? I missed you there. What is that question?
The industrial building in the middle of the quiz, the overlay district.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that's better, that's fine with me. Anyone else? Robert, Mickey, did you have any particularly strong?
I'm
feelings?
fine with it. If it makes a difference, I think what Amos said is sensible. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I kind of remember that feeling the same way when we first went over it, but then someone else changed my mind. I was like, okay, well, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
I think the question, I think there will be, I think there will be some questioning of that from other members of the community. I also think that people will then start asking, well, why not the whole industrial park? And the industrial park is
I know,
actually
but,
quite,
we did the same thing on Foundry and we included the big factory warehouse building. I mean, it's.
But yeah.
IDC and that, I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
If they have questions, they should come to these meetings and talk to us, because I'm not sure.
Well,
the right way.
It's not.
Yeah.
This lot is not an industrial park, period.
I'm sorry.
This lot does not face the industrial park,
Yeah,
period.
I mean.
It is not-
However, maybe someone has some great idea why why they feel strongly that IDC should not be included in there, and they can send an email to you that you can share with us or something. I have no idea. So let's do it. If the people feel that way, they come ask them to tell us why. Right? I mean.
The opposite. I think
Yeah.
you know why
Mhm.
to exclude it is the question. No, why to include it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think, again, we actually have a vibrant, Easton has a vibrant industrial park. And that while it's not part of the park proper, and again, it's the business that's operating there.
Oh,
That
I'm with you.
it's
I'm not
right.
saying-
It's-
East
so,
Street probably
you
has-
know-
This bylaw does not mandate to take that business out.
And right, right.
Okay.
I'm acknowledging that, Amos.
Yeah,
that it is the business that's thriving.
All right,
And it might make the numbers better.
All right, let's compare, we'll compare assessed values of the two big industrial lots that we're considering.
Yeah,
And then look at Roach Brothers too. Let's look at, actually, that'd be interesting, right? Yeah. To look at the actual, what taxes these different
Yeah.
zones pay already and what it would cut, what we'd lose if they switch from commercial to. But, okay.
you'll probably find that
Mhm.
the multifamily brings in more taxes.
and
Um,
people
Definitely.
tell us that it actually makes us lots of money because they go by.
Avalon is the largest taxpayer in the town.
Ooh, Doug King used to claim to be the largest taxpayer, so but you're probably right. Yeah. Okay.
So, you
let's
probably don't wanna
you ready
put
to move on?
Stephanie, I have a procedural question about the procedure. When you have the bylaw, the state has to review and tell us.
They
it's
need
okay?
they need 90 days to review it.
90 days. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Before we vote on it? Yeah, right, that will
Yep.
happen. So you cannot submit to the town hall until the state give us okay. So it is possible that it will bounce back, right?
Yes, and what we're hoping is because Lexington's is already before the state, and I believe Pembroke's is before the state. I think they have several that they have not commented on. We've heard that they should be giving feedback or an approval very shortly on at least one of those. And we will definitely look at what any comments they have or any changes that they're requiring so that we can anticipate that in our own zoning.
Yeah, wow, so IDC is valued at 3.7 million, the one next to big one next to Target,
Yep,
16 million evaluation.
but not, I think Avalon is,
Oh, no, but I was just comparing.
yeah, so you're saying just the
I was just
the
comparing
warehouse.
two
Yep.
industrial / business uses on
Yep.
that.
Yep,
Avalon is 18, yep, Avalon front is 18 million, just for the fun of it now. And, oh, wait, no, that's not Avalon front.
I
Yeah.
think Avalon is,
Oh, no, Target's 15.
yeah, is 55.
Yeah, geez. It's good now, yeah.
I have that number.
Oh. Let's see, the front one is 10, and then the back one is 55, yep. Cool, that was actually just comparing the two, like industrial uses there, so. Neat. So I'll try to find the agenda so we can keep on, moving along.
Oh, yeah, I thought,
Unless we get lost. Sorry. And I think that's actually about it. So what do you guys think about well, now that we've gone to 8:41, you're gonna say I like remote meetings, but what do you think about the possibility of having an occasional in-person meeting and maybe some of the, I think we heard someone from the public's opinion about that. I've had people ask and say, oh, all the other towns are doing all in-person meetings. I'm like, oh, yeah, right. But what do you think?
I will need to get dressed.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sort of agnostic about it. I tend to think that more people will, show up to a Zoom hearing, but,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they especially don't have to get all dressed up. But yeah, I agree. But I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. So.
I mean, I'm willing to show up if more people show up in person. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think they will, but you can do both.
yeah. If I could just, because, I sit here and monitor the attendees, and
Yeah.
so I can let Peter know if he's missed anybody when they're speaking and stuff. And we have seen more consistent participation in your planning board meetings going to Zoom than we ever saw in person, and it's consistent. I think last meeting we maybe had one person, and that was unusual in all the time that I've been doing Zoom meetings with the board through COVID.
Yep.
So, and I know other we talk amongst ourselves, planners, and I'm on, I was on the Brockton Conservation Commission, which, we would see a lot of public participation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was a time when people had nothing better to do. Watch the planning board.
I think what we'll do is we'll make sure we advertise. I mean, we don't, when I say advertise, I mean letting people know, like through Town Crier and the news item that on the town's webpage that the board is talking about the MBTA zoning.
Yeah.
Can I just say from experience too, Zoom meetings are more equitable. If you are a parent who want to attend meetings, but you have kids, you don't have to hire a babysitter. You don't have to pay to participate in town. There are a lot of folks who I know who would love to participate more, and Zoom has actually made that possible. So I think a mix is good, but definitely keeping it on Zoom where as many people as possible can kind of weigh in, and definitely always advertising more. You can never do that enough, I've learned.
Yeah, right. And sometimes for like other people that maybe can't get out in a snowstorm or something like that, right? Yeah,
or if you can't drive at night.
Yeah, I can't drive. Yeah, things like you can't drive at night.
Yeah, that's or hearing. I mean, we were one of the last public meetings I was at before COVID hit here in Easton. There was a woman sitting next to me, and she was hard of hearing. She had a hearing loss, and the poor woman could not hear anything and just kept saying all night, I can't hear, I can't hear, I can't hear. So you do definitely give people an opportunity who have might have some accessibility challenges.
do we provide like when we like record these, does ECAT do like a transcript so people could actually like read?
We can actually turn on closed caption. I
Mhm.
don't think we've
Yeah.
done that, but we
Well,
certainly
we
can.
did, since we're talking about it, it's not really.
Yeah,
But hey, came up, all right. Okay, and hybrid, I don't like the idea of hybrid and trying to figure out, who's raising their hand online and all that stuff, and it seems like it isn't the best solution there. Either, we can have an occasional meeting, maybe in person, see how it goes, but, all right, we'll just maybe we'll look at the calendar and maybe some other time and pick one, where we can really.
It's
be
not,
immersed.
you need
Oh.
a big screen and it's not that simple.
No, right, yeah, neither Stephanie doesn't want to do that, and right, yeah. I don't think
well,
so.
hybrid,
Yeah, we're gonna.
I
test it.
think Wayne's gonna hate me. You need someone managing it, but
Yeah, we're gonna
yes,
say,
we
like,
have
Stephanie,
Stan,
share
we
your
have
screen, because they
Wayne,
can't
so-
share their screen, now do this, now do that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we run them all the time at my library, and they're
Oh, really?
doable, but they're tough. We have 2 smart boards that we move through 3 floors to run all of the public meetings, and the same across the street at Town Hall.
Wow,
And it's doable, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
We've eliminated that option, so now we'll stick with online for the most part, but maybe schedule in person here and there for the fun of it and see how it goes. Yeah, okay, well, this note on the agenda says the next meeting will be held Tuesday, September 5th. So that's coming up right around the corner there, so let us know if you can't make the meeting.
Yeah, that's, if I can, Peter, as Peter said, it's on a Tuesday. That's because the 4th is Labor Day. And I know people go away around either the week before, which is this week, or the holiday, so.
Yeah, I think I'm back. I'm going away. I think I'm back on Tuesday, but
Cool, all right. Sounds good. Chair report, not too much, except I hear there's a possibility that we might have maybe one new board member at some point in the somewhat near future.
I have heard rumors. I have not had a chance to substantiate them.
But I don't think it was on the agenda for whatever last week, so I guess it would still be another couple of weeks on their agenda. Okay, and planning director, do you have any updates? Oh, Stephanie, that's for you.
And
Planning director
Peter,
update.
did we do the minutes? I don't have any updates,
yeah.
sorry.
Skipped over that, but now is a good time for that. So the meeting minutes, I looked at them and they looked good.
good for me.
Okay, is that a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes, Stetson.
Kevin, second.
All in favor, Wolf,
Aye.
Kadam,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Shane, aye. Motion passes. So no more planning, neither the planning director or chair updates. Does anyone else have anything to bring up before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Stetson.
All in favor? Stetson,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Stetson, Kadam.
Aye.
Right when it gets around 9 o'clock, all right, good time to finish this up. Okay, thanks, Wayne, nice to see you, thanks for coming by, thanks, everyone, thanks, members of the
Thank you.
public. Have a good night,
All right, good night, everybody.
goodbye.